Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to our webinar on Going for the Win, Drivers of Innovation in the Dairy Industry, brought to you by CFAIR, the Council on Food, Agricultural, and Resource Economics. My name is Jane Kolodinsky, and I'm the CFAIR Program Chair. It's my pleasure to be moderating today's webinar. Next slide. It's CFAIR's mission to translate high-level research and knowledge to a diverse audience that includes policymakers, elected officials, and federal administrators. When we demonstrate the value of the profession to all of these groups, the Council increases public appreciation for research, extension, outreach, and academic programs related to agricultural and applied economics. Before we get started, I wanted to provide some background on today's topic. This webinar will highlight how strategic funding and applied research, outreach, and demonstration are delivering practical, science-based solutions to critical challenges in the dairy industry. The dairy industry continues to face complex challenges that demand innovative, evidence-based solutions to maintain the industry's ability to meet consumer demand for dairy products in ways that are economically viable, efficient, and sustainable. This session will spotlight collaborative efforts between public and private sectors, researchers, and extension professionals that are driving real change on the farm and beyond. We'll explore innovations in animal feeding strategies, solution to labor shortages, advances in production, and smart approaches to managing dairy waste. This webinar will offer a compelling look at how investment in agricultural research directly supports a thriving dairy sector. Next slide. For our webinar, we've assembled a panel of experts to discuss their work, starting with John Winston. Dr. John Winston is an agricultural economist working on sustainable livestock production systems and performance-based environmental policies for agriculture. His current work includes assessing the profitability of larger herd, low overhead dairy grazing as a viable alternative for traditional farms in the Northeast and Great Lakes Basin. Dr. Winston has also led dairy grazing projects in Puerto Rico and Kazakhstan. He holds a BS and an MS degree from the University of Vermont and a PhD in agricultural economics from Penn State University. Next slide. Alejandro Gutierrez Lee is an assistant professor of agriculture and resource economics at North Carolina State University. He obtained his PhD in economics at Washington University in St. Louis. His research lies in the areas of labor economics and applied microeconomics, with an emphasis on economics of immigration and entrepreneurship. His recent work has analyzed the role of home country work experience of immigrants in their labor market performance in the United States, factors affecting Mexico-U.S. migration, the determinants of the farm labor supply, and the economic outcomes of Hispanics, among others. In addition, he leads a new research and outreach initiative related to agricultural labor in the U.S., covering topics such as mechanization, the H-2A visa program, farm worker training, retention, and immigration policy. Next slide. Dr. Shahir Birney is an associate professor and the director of the SRC at University of Wisconsin, River Falls. Dr. Birney's research focus is twofold. One prong addresses the challenges facing small-scale producers, including issues of consolidation and the transition to sustainable practices. Dr. Birney and his research team have conducted multiple studies of farmers on the issues of sustainability, technology adoption on dairy farms, the impact of structural changes in the dairy industry on rural communities, factors that impact farmer mental health and well-being, and others. The second prong of Dr. Birney's research examines the economics of low-income households, particularly those who are facing food insecurity and are eligible to participate in federal food and nutrition assistance programs. Next slide. Dr. Luis Peña Levano is an assistant professor of cooperative extension in dairy cattle production, health, and management economics at the University of California, Davis. His interdisciplinary research integrates dairy economics, farm financial management, agribusiness strategy, and mathematical optimization with applications in sustainable dairy systems, animal health, automation, labor, and resilience strategies. Wow, you're really transdisciplinary, Luis. He's led and collaborated on projects exceeding $2.5 million in competitive funding from USDA, SARE, ERMI, and other agencies. Next slide. Dr. Mark McGuire is a University Distinguished Professor in the Department of Animal, Veterinary, and Food Sciences in the College of Agricultural and Life Sciences at the University of Idaho. His research focuses on nutrition, milk synthesis, the role of animal products in the human diet, and the sustainability of food production systems. Over the course of his career, Dr. McGuire has published more than 130 peer-reviewed journal articles, 8 book chapters, and an edited textbook. His research program has supported by more than $16 million in competitive external funding from agencies such as the USDA, NIH, NSF, and the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation. Next slide. Before we start, we wanted to explain how to ask us questions during the webinar to make sure that you, the audience, knows how to engage with us. During the webinar, you can put questions to one or all of the speakers by typing them into the box in the control display panel, accessed by clicking on the question dropdown. Please see the slide. It's easier to look at it than to hear me say it, and then sending it to the organizer. Now I'll hand the webinar over to our presenters. John will start us off. Welcome, John.
Thank you very much, Jane. I appreciate all those introductions. It's nice to meet the fellow panelists also. So as stated, I'm an ag economist. I am based in Vermont. My dad had a traditional dairy farm, and after college, I spent a year in New Zealand working on a bunch of different farms, and I learned a very different way to dairy farm. And it's a lower milk per cow system, what they do there, which I call low overhead dairy grazing. But it can be a more profitable system per acre and per unit of milk produced. And I think those are very important metrics. So this system can save dairy farms that want to stay in the sector, and make them competitive. But we're trying to create a pathway to that for farmers, and there's some difficulties in it, and I'm happy to have the opportunity to explain to you this work. Next slide, please. So we've all seen a traditional dairy farm, right? The picture on the left with the red barn and the silos. Inside the barn, this is sort of a traditional tie stall barn, just like one my dad had. It's a limited number of cows, and it's very hard in today's dairy economy to make any money with an operation like this. It's highly inefficient. The pressures in the industry are really get big or get out. And a lot of farmers feel that. Next slide, please. So the low overhead dairy grazing not only is profitable, so it has private benefits to farmers who use it, but there's a lot of public benefits that come primarily from the land being in permanent vegetative cover rather than being cropped. And I'm going to come back to this infographic. This is something that we had as part of a paper we published a few years ago, and I'll talk about it more in a couple minutes. Next slide, please. So to give you a sense of what low overhead dairy grazing looks like, I have a few slides here, and it's really about the capital requirements that are involved. So for the farmstead on the left, you can see an aerial image of a large modern confinement dairy, and a farm like that may house 2,500 cows. It's a lot of capital required to put that together. Most farmers can't do that, and the ones who can leverage quite heavily to do so often. On the right is a picture of a low overhead dairy grazing operation where what they've set up, the building in the foreground, is a milking center. So there's a milking parlor in there, which I'll show a picture of in a minute, and a milk house with a bulk tank to keep the milk cool. But it's a relatively very inexpensive capital investment that can be quite efficient for a herd of maybe 250 cows. So much smaller than the other kind of farm, but bigger than what a traditional dairy farm might be. Next slide, please. So in terms of feeding requirements, right, inside those barns that we saw on the left, you see this is a big freestall barn, right? The cows can move around, they can go lie down in a stall, they can come over to the feed alley and eat, and that's a total mixed ration that's put out in front of them with forages and grains and minerals, and it's balanced to produce a lot of milk per cow. And these operations are very impressive. It's amazing how much progress has been made on productivity per cow in the dairy sector. On the right, the low overhead dairy grazing operation has a very different focus. It really is on maximizing the nutrient intake from grazed pasture forage during the grazing season and supplementing smartly to maximize profit and income over feed costs. Um, this kind of system, the grazing system, is really about the pasture forage being able to produce nutrients and the cows turning that into a saleable product, milk. Next slide, please. So the milking system also so important on a dairy farm, obviously. On the left, you see a very large milking parlor, a lot of capital investment. A lot of these farms have rotary parlors and many have robotic milking now. It all requires quite a bit of investment. On the right, again, for a farm that might be 250 cows, you see what's called a swing parlor. And it's relatively very inexpensive, but it has high cow throughput. And so two people in a parlor like that can milk 250 cows in 2 hours and be done. And so that's a really important piece for getting labor efficiency, which is huge on a dairy farm. Next slide, please. So I want to talk a little bit about the profitability of this system and what we know about it. There are not a lot of larger herd, low overhead dairy grazing operations in the US. There are some, and we're working with some in the Great Lakes Basin and here in the Northeast. But because there's not the ability to have a large sample of financial analyses that's statistically significant, what we did was use a panel of farmers and farm financial experts to put together representative financials for an operation as I'm describing, like a 250 cow, low overhead dairy grazing operation. And because milk price and feed prices are so variable and so impactful in dairy farm profitability, we didn't want to just use an average for either of those. So what we did was we took actual milk and feed price data from 2011 to 2021, and we created a Monte Carlo simulation where our numbers were run 10,000 times. Each time it pulls a milk and a feed price number and it calculates the profitability. If you could click, please, Lisa. So what we get is a distribution of 10,000 different um, profit numbers. And the average over these 10,000 iterations for this low overhead dairy grazing scenario is $3.64 a hundredweight. 80% of them are generally between $2 and $5. And importantly, none of them were negative, which I found quite astonishing. But let's put this in some context. So next, if you could click, Lisa, please. What we did was right there, pulled from the Finbin data set for dairy farm financial numbers, and all of those were calculated with the FinPack software. So it's a comprehensive, standardized dairy farm financial analysis. And there were thousands of observations from 2011 to 2021. And the average over that period was 88 cents of net farm income or profit. It's one of the profit metrics in dairy per hundredweight of milk produced. So the dairy grazing operation was about 4 times as profitable. Next slide, please. If you want more information on this analysis, I'd be happy to send you this paper. Next slide, please. In terms of the public and private benefits, in this infographic, again, I mentioned that the permanent vegetative cover holds soil and nutrients in place. So some modeling we did with the USDA tool for a farm in Wisconsin compared to a traditional farm on that same farm footprint with a traditional crop rotation, the dairy grazing operation lost 71% less phosphorus and 62% less nitrogen loss. These are really important metrics for water quality from the dairy sector. So there's other environmental impacts. There's some social impacts in terms of having a higher number of farms that are profitable in a community. There's animal health and welfare benefits, as well as the private sector. So next and final slide. So all this is great, right? It's profitable, it's environmental. What's the problem? Click, please. Basically, we need public policy to help illuminate a pathway for farmers towards dairy grazing and to be able to reap the public benefit. So I just want to tell you a little bit about why and how. Click, please. In terms of finance, the traditional dairy farmers who have that tie stall barn and have a lot of debt per cow and a limited number of cows, their cash flow situation urges them to produce as much milk as they can per cow. And so grazing, as I said, is going to produce less. Farmers are not going to be inclined to go that way because of their debt. So click, please. What can we do? We can use public finance to help farmers restructure their debt in order to get towards low overhead dairy grazing. It's a fairly simple solution. Click, please. In terms of technical assistance, almost all of the university research and extension in dairy is focused on confinement, modern confinement dairy. And I can understand that that's where the industry is going. But what we need is, click please, we need to train public and private staff to be effective technical service providers on dairy grazing in the states where dairy is important. Click please. Lastly, to monetize ecosystem services, right? So this permanent vegetative cover, there's carbon credit potential, there's water quality credit potential. Click, please. Unfortunately, it's too expensive for an individual farmer to quantify and monetize those for the little amount that they'd get. But if we could create programs that aggregate the carbon and water quality credits across farms, monetize them, and help distribute additional revenue back to dairy farmers, that would be hugely important also. Click, please. That's the end of my presentation. My contact info is here. Our funding is from the Great Lakes Protection Fund and the Northeast Dairy Business Innovation Center. And we have a bunch of information on the web. If folks want it, feel free to get in touch with me. Thanks. And Jane, I'm sorry if I went over.
That's okay. Thanks, John. Don't forget to put your questions in the drop-down box. I see they're already starting to come in, and we'll get them at the end of the webinar. We're going to turn to Shahir and Luis.
Thank you very much, Jane, and all the presenters. Today, Dr. Burney and I will present about labor constraints and automation trends in California and Wisconsin dairy farming. I want to point out, next slide please, that this presentation has been made thanks to a collaboration with Dr. Burney and his team at the Solvay Research Center. Next, please. And next, with my postdoctoral scholar, Dr. Luis Garcia Covarrubias, and Dr. Jim Salfer, professor from University of Minnesota. This is collaboration which is from a publication that is forthcoming in Choices, and is this a subsequent paper from the study that we did thanks to the Sustainable Research and Education Grant, who allowed us to do originally a 2023-2024 survey. So what we're going to present here is actually the sequel, in which we're going to focus on California and Wisconsin. Next slide, please. So first, I wanted to point out the differences between California and Wisconsin. And the reason why we have been working with these two states is because both are the largest producers of dairy in the United States. But despite that, both are different in terms of dimensions. Next, please. In the case of California, they are the largest producers of milk and representing about 17% of the total output. And this is due to the topography and the size of the farms. Overall, farms in California are about 1,200 cows. Next, please. In contrast, Wisconsin has the largest number of farms, but on average, the farms have about 250 cows. But because they possess a pasture and corn and soybeans, they actually have a different structure. And because there are about 6,000 farmers, they produce about 14% of the total production of milk. Next, please. An important thing that is interesting is that despite only being these two states, both together are able to hire about 35,000 workers per year. As you can imagine, this is a very large number, and it's a very important case for the importance of workers in both states. Next, please. And next. So as we have seen before, automation is actually a very important point. And just to let you know how big it is, the dairy farms in the US, it is about 3.3% of the whole GDP of the United States. So it's a major industry. And as has been mentioned before, labor shortage is one of the major issues that we are facing at the moment. And because of that, many of the industries are trying to go towards investing in technology. And one of the most important technologies that there is right now in dairy farming is automated milking systems, because it is said that that can decrease the reliance on manual labor. Next, please. So just to give you an idea how actually works automatic milking systems. So as you can see, and I know that actually there are many movements, the automatic milking system is where the cow automatically goes and tries to voluntarily goes to the gate. It depends actually on the system if you have a free flow where the cow can go directly, or a guided flow where the cow is allowed, depending on the gate, to go inside the system. So once it is there, there is a cleaning and preparation. Then after that, we have the movement of the milking and then a post cleaning. And all of this, as you can imagine, since the start of the milking process, the cow doesn't need to be fetched. It automatically goes there. So in summary, the automatic milking systems are robots with sensors. And next, please. One interesting thing is that each box can milk about 60 to 70 cows per day. Next. However, and this is actually an important point, although the major purpose is to try to reduce the reliance on labor, next please, one of the major constraints is the initial investment, without taking into consideration maintenance or repairments. The initial investment per box is about 200 to 275,000, which means that, as I mentioned before, in the case of Wisconsin, they have about 240 cows, 250. This means that one farmer would need about $1 million to invest if they want to automate all of the system. Next, please. So the hypothesis here that we have in this project is, what are the factors that lead the adoption of automatic milking systems? And Dr. Burney will explain that in the next slide.
Next slide, please. Thank you, Luis, for setting that up. All right, so I'll talk about our study here a little bit. So we started by conducting a survey of farmers, dairy farmers in 2 states. Like Luis mentioned, these are the 2 largest dairy producing states in the country. California has the largest production of milk. Wisconsin has the largest number of farms. And so this was early 2024. We conducted a survey in both states. We did it through the University of Wisconsin River Falls Survey Research Center, which is sort of like a separate arm of the university. And we do surveys of farmers throughout the country. So our sampling frame was 2,000 dairy farmers randomly selected from our population. And we did it in January. January is the best time to survey farmers because it's right after marketing and harvesting season, right before planting season. So we sent out the survey in January. We used the Dillman-Toll design method, which means we did 3 mailings. We sent out the initial survey, followed by a postcard reminder, followed by a second mailing a few weeks after the postcard reminder to non-respondents. And we ended up with a decent sized sample here, about 557 responses after cleaning, after dropping some of the invalid responses. And that's about a response rate of 26%. So not too bad. Looks we have a good amount of data to work with. Next slide, please, Lisa. All right, so I'll delve into some of the attributes of the sample here, and then we'll talk about, we'll do some comparisons between Wisconsin and California farmers and also AMS and non-AMS farmers. So the average age of the age of the average farmer in our samples is about 40, 46, something like that. Majority of our farmers are middle-aged, that is, they're between 35 and 65 years of age. And that's pretty representative of the population. We know that from the Census of Ag, that it matches closely with what the population looks like. In terms of household income, 78% of farmers earn less than $150,000 per year. This is not farm income. I should clarify, this is household income. So it includes income from the farm, but also off-farm sources. So total income for the average farming household, less than $150,000 per year. Obviously, a wide disparity between California and Wisconsin. Wisconsin is characterized by small-scale family farms. California has much larger operations, and so many of those farmers are going to be above the 150K mark. And 9% of the farmers in our sample are organic farms. These are certified organic. We have many farms that do organic but are not certified. That's also the case, and those would not be included in that 9%. Next slide, please, Lisa. All right, so we'll start by talking about labor, and in this slide, we're comparing full-time labor only, not part-time. So you have California on the left, Wisconsin on the right there, and striking difference between the two states is about half of all full-time workers on Wisconsin farms are family and relatives. So again, majority of, in fact, overwhelming majority of Wisconsin farms are small family-owned farms. So half of the labor comes from family, the household running the farm, but also relatives. In California, only 9% of workers are full-time workers are family or relatives. In contrast, about 43% of the workers full-time workers in California are immigrants, where about a third of them, only 32% are immigrants in Wisconsin. And again, that has a lot to do with farm size. If you are a 250, 300 cow dairy, you're not looking to navigate the immigration system to hire H-2A workers. It's a lot more difficult for you. And if you're only hiring 2 or 3 workers, it becomes pretty challenging. The fixed cost gets pretty large there per worker. But in California, with larger farms, they have the resources and the wherewithal to navigate the immigration system and hire more workers, because again, they're hiring 20, 30 workers at a time. So that's the main difference between the two. But of course, in California, a large chunk of the labor also comes from our domestic workers, U.S. residents or citizens. Next slide, please. We'll also look at part-time workers. And part-time labor, this story is pretty similar between the two. And a lot of it is driven by the fact that part-time labor, primarily in Wisconsin and California, both states, come from high school students. Okay, so these are high school students looking for 4-hour shifts and so on. If it's an immigrant worker, they're not looking to work 4 hours a day on a farm. They're looking for 10 to 14 hours per day. And so that's why that chunk of the slice of the pie for immigrant workers is much smaller. Next slide, please. Okay, here we'll compare AMS versus non-AMS farmers, and we're looking at the challenges in finding workers, retaining workers, supervising and training workers. And let's focus on the figure on the left there. So we have 3 bars. The first bar is AMS farmers. The second bar is farmers that don't have AMS but are considering installing AMS. They have interest in it. And then the third bar are farmers who are using conventional milking systems and have no interest in AMS. They don't plan to install AMS, implement AMS anytime soon. The green represents the lowest level of difficulty. That is, it's easy in finding Finding high quality workers is easy, and then, you know, yellow is difficult, red is very difficult. So let's look at the green bar there. What we see here is exactly what we would expect. The potential adopters are having the most amount of difficulty in finding high quality workers. And that's likely one of the reasons that they're considering installing AMS. And we know from other studies in this one too, that one of the primary reasons farmers install AMS is to reduce their reliance on manual labor. And so not much of a difference between AMS farmers and conventional milkers, but potential adopters have the highest level of difficulty, or the lowest proportion of potential adopters find it easy to find high quality workers. The story is sort of similar when we look at other metrics here for labor, such as training, supervising, and retaining workers. Next slide, please, Lisa. So training workers, we can see that from here. In the next slide, we see supervising workers, same story, retaining workers, same story. So labor really is one of the main drivers that's leading farmers to adopt technology. Next slide, please. AMS is not the only technology that is adopted at a time. When farmers implement AMS, they install a lot of other things too. So whether they're building a new barn or retrofitting an existing barn, really it's, you know, they make the investment in a bunch of things. So automatic feeders, scrapers, cluster removers, automatic washers are pretty popular. About a third of the farmers use automatic washers once they install AMS. Next slide, please. One of the things that was sort of striking to us was, you know, there's a lot of hype around AMS, and for good reason, but adoption of AMS is pretty limited. So 80% of the farmers in our sample from both states said that they don't have AMS and they're not considering it. 15% were in that potential adopter pile, and only 5% of the farmers actually have AMS. So that's a pretty low adoption rate. Despite the benefits of it, despite all of the promotion, only 5% of the farmers are actually using it. Next slide, please. All right, so we're going to look at who actually is adopting AMS, and we're going to look at some demographic attributes here. Let's start with household income for the farmers, and that's the figure on the left. This graph is sort of inverted. The bottom portion, the bottom bar in this, and the bottom chunk of these bars is the 150K plus. So as we can see, AMS farmers and potential adopters both tend to have higher household incomes than farmers that are doing manual milking and are not interested in installing it. In the interest of time, I'm going to skip to the next slide here. Age is pretty straightforward, but I do want to mention farm size. AMS farmers, these are the blue bars on the figure on the left, they tend to have more acreage than any other group. And so it's pretty common in Wisconsin for, you know, farmers to do some cash cropping too. So they're also doing corn and soybeans on the side. So it's a diversified operation from that perspective. And it seems like there's some correlation between the level of diversification and the likelihood of installing AMS. Not much of a difference in herd size though. Next slide, please. I'm also going to skip this one, Lisa. Please, let's go to the next one. I do want to hand it to Luis here soon. Yeah, this is an important one that sort of wraps it all up. And then the next slide after this is conclusion. So one of the questions we asked in the survey, we asked the adopters, what were the primary reasons you adopted AMS? By and large, over 2/3 of the respondents said to reduce the reliance on manual labor. And so the tightness of the agricultural labor market is obviously spilling over, is motivating farmers to install it. That's a primary reason. The second most popular reason was milk yield. That is the potential for higher productivity. And we know that from studies that installing AMS does increase milkings. In fact, milkings go up from an average of 2.2 to close to 3 milkings per day without sacrificing the components, which, you know, for example, the butterfat content does not actually decline when milking increases. So there's that increase in milk yield that leads to higher revenue. So there are some gains from that. And the third one was to modernize the farm. These are the older guys that are looking to retire and hand down the farm to the next generation, and they want to implement the modernization before they do that. We asked the non-adopters, why have you chosen not to install AMS? Why are you not interested in that? Primary reason, too expensive. Like Luis mentioned, like Dr. Peña-Levano mentioned, it costs 200 to 275K per box per unit to install an MS. When we're looking at, for a 250, 300 cow dairy, we're looking at about a $2 million investment. A lot of these small scale farms are already over leveraged. And so, taking a $2 million loan in a high interest rate environment, not so easy. That was the prime reason. And I'll stop here. I'll hand it back to Dr. Penny for the conclusion.
Thank you. And in next slide, please. So just to conclude, one of the major reasons why people are, or the dairy farmers are trying to adopt automation in general is because the labor turnover, which is actually a major stressor for dairy farmers. As we noticed, very interestingly, Wisconsin has a larger adoption rate in terms of automation of milking systems compared to California. But because of the large upfront cost, it is still not a viable solution for many farmers. One of the things that actually we are exploring, and this is actually a further study that we are doing in Germany with one of my postdoctoral, research fellows and another colleague from Germany, is to try to evaluate semi-automation as one of the viable solutions. Thank you.
Thank you. Our final presenter is Mark. Mark, welcome.
Thank you. Good morning from Idaho. It's my pleasure to represent a USDA AFRI Sustainable Ag Systems Award that was granted to the University of Idaho in 2020. That's tied to an opportunity out of creating businesses and economics around extracting nutrients and other products out of manure. We've coined this project the Idaho Sustainable Agricultural Initiative for Dairy, or the ISAD grant. And it may come to some surprise that Idaho is interested in dairy, but we're the 4th largest dairy state, and the value of dairy is about 4 times that of potatoes to the state of Idaho. So we have over 20 faculty that have participated in this project, and the idea here is to extract nutrients and use them to compare to commercial fertilizers and associated cropping systems, and look at the benefits to soil health and how those potential industries around dairy manure can support new opportunities in rural communities in Idaho. As such, there's been a number of researchers that have done basic research, but also applied research through extension. So we have extensively used the appropriations, state appropriations for Hatch and Smith-Lever funds to support this work. The extension work has looked at supporting asking dairymen their interest in these kind of technologies, asking crop specialists how they view these technologies. And then we've also asked a number of consumer panelists how they would accept some of these technologies, such as bioplastics, that I'll talk about briefly shortly. In addition, we have used these technologies as a primary part of an educational system where our senior capstone course in Ag Economics has developed business and marketing plans for each of these technologies. Next slide, please. So this just highlights some of the areas. Those circled numbers are the technologies that we've explored with regards to obtaining new bioproducts out of manure. I'll move on quickly to the next slide and talk about some of these products. So the first product, first technology is a pilot scale composting system that was developed by our faculty member, Mario Daharo Marti. And this system allows an evaluation of additives such as biochar, zeolite, or other additives to dairy manure in the production of compost, which is a common process that occurs in Idaho dairies. And then you can determine whether or not through a number of sensors for gas and temperature and such, you can determine whether or not you've reached the critical temperature to reduce the pathogens and reduced the loss of nutrients through gases. So this really is a pilot system that allows replication to really assess the value of those additives before you go to full-scale, large compost piles. Next slide, please. One of our faculty in College of Engineering, Eric Coates, has developed a technology that takes fermentation of dairy manure and produces bioplastics. These are biodegradable thermoplastics, polyhydroxyalkanoates or PHAs that can be molded into various shapes. These are two discs on the lower right of those plastics, and they contain a high level of phosphorus that has been extracted from the manure. So if you can imagine, we could use these materials to maybe make pots for nurseries, and you could plant your marigolds in that biodegradable pot that has phosphorus already there to enhance the color of those flowers. Next slide, please. An additional opportunity is through the process of hydrothermal carbonization, which is different from the creation of biochar in that under high temperature and pressure, you can apply this to wet biomass such as manure and produce a product called hydrochar. And in doing so, you recover a substantial amount of the phosphorus in that manure. And we are using this for ongoing greenhouse trials before moving to field trials to test the value of this as a crop nutrient. Next slide. Dr. Chen and he have further developed a prototype that is continuous flow that can handle over a couple 100 pounds of manure an hour and really will ramp up the production of this for testing. Next slide, please. And the last technology I'd like to highlight is the clean water machine that Dan Strawn and Greg Moeller have produced that can not only address issues associated with dairy waste, but a variety of different systems. This gives a schematic where the influence from collection canals for irrigation, dairy processing plants, lagoons from dairies can be cleaned up through a variety of technologies and enrich biochar for crop nutrients while providing an output of clean water. You can see in that photograph in the lower left where the water is progressively cleaned ultimately till you can have that clean water. Next slide, please. This work has been extensively tested in a number of settings across the state of Idaho. The recovery on biochar on this mobile platform is shown in the lower left. Clearly, this material is enriched in phosphorus and can provide nutrients for plants and crop growth, and large-scale field trials have been ongoing for a number of years. And in my last slide, it just shows that this plant on the mobile trailer is movable, and we've found that it's been able to be tested across on dairies to demonstrate to dairy producers the real opportunity. So my last slide, please, shows this mobile trailer. I'll also say this technology is being used in human sewage treatment plants around the world at this point. So it's a very low-cost opportunity to extract nutrients and provide a possible business opportunity for dairy producers to sell those nutrients from their lagoon water for crop producers. Thanks for the opportunity, and thank you to USDA AFRI SAS program for the funds.